Test, test, testing. One, two, three, test. One, two, three, test. So, hello guys, this is our first live streaming episode. So, basically, I want to engage with the audience regarding random topic. Anything that you like me to talk. So, basically, I will just give my feedback on to all of your comment. So, for the time being, I will try to find some interesting topic for us to see and also for us to maybe talk a little bit about it. So, if you happen to be live in Malaysia, so a week or 2 weeks ago, basically this kind of local election that being held in one of the Malaysian state that's situated in Peninsular Malaysia, which is Negeri Sembilan. So, if we view the result of the election itself, it's kind of interesting because Negeri Sembilan used to be a state that is run by Pakatan Harapan coalition government back in 2018. So if we go to the election that been held in 2018, which is almost 8 years ago actually, Negeri Sembilan actually ruled by Pakatan Harapan. So as you can see, Pakatan Harapan hold around 20 seat. Barisan Nasional, which is led by Tok Mat back then, Muhammad Hassan, only won 16. And PAS, because back then there is no Perikatan Nasional, held 0 seat. So if we see the electoral maps of it, this is actually represent the parliamentary seat. So if you see, Parlimen Tampin had been won by Amanah, Parlimen Kuala Pilah had been won by PPBM, Seremban and Rasa had been won by both DAP lah. And we can see here Port Dickson has been won by PKR with a huge margin. So if we go, don't want to see the parliament seat, but the state seat. So we could see that overwhelmingly in this part of area, you can see Nilai, Lobak, Bukit Kepayang, Mambau, Seremban Jaya, Lukut. This is the place that is strong tendency towards DAP. And if we could view here, Paroi, Ampangan, Sikamat, Labu, Chua, this is the seat that used to be held by Pakatan Harapan through PKR party. If we could view this, PKR, Bahau, Repah. Interesting, because if we view Kelawang and also Lenggeng, both of these seats used to be held by Amanah, Lenggeng and Kelawang. But if I'm not mistaken, Kelawang had already been won by Bersatu in the latest election, and also Lenggeng by Barisan Nasional. Same thing happened to Paroi, to Ampangan, to Sikamat. Paroi actually had been held by PAS. Paroi is actually one of the Dewan Undangan Negeri seat that had been put in the, if I'm not mistaken, Rembau Parliament seat. So it's actually one of the Rembau Parliament seat punya dun lah. So if you view other part of it, Labu have been fall to BN. Unfortunately, there is no latest in this website, so we will find the other way. 2026. Hmm. I think we could view it here. There's no electoral map. We, we try other way. Mm. So as we can see, there are two kind of electoral mapping, which is in 2023, and also the last one that happened 2 weeks ago, which is 2026. We could see here, this used to be red, and also this used to be red. But what happened in this election? It had been turned to blue, which is Anthony Locke seat, and also this seat Kelawang, which had been held by Pakatan Kelawang, if I'm not mistaken, Amanah, but had been switched to Perikatan Nasional under Wawasan. Um, Not much happened in this area, but as we can see, Ampagan, oh no, Pilah, and also Repah had been held by, used to be held by Pakatan Harapan, fall to BN. If you can see here, Repah, oh, kind of interesting because Repah is not seat that being held by PKR. So it predominantly it is a non-Malay seat, not a Malay one. So a non-Malay seat also had. Sorry, there are some kind of miscommunication happened back then. So for us to continue, okay, back in 2023, if you could see, many of this part actually is red, and it happens to be turned into blue. Ampangan, Sikamat, and this seat that used being held by, if I'm not mistaken, Bersatu, have been turned into blue, which is Barisan Nasional. So PH seat actually had been reduced into only 11 seat. This include 8 or 9 of it, which is consists of DAP seat, and also the remaining is PKR. And all of these 11 seat is actually a predominantly non-Malay and non-Muslim seat, while the seat that had been won by BN and also Perikatan Nasional had been predominantly Malay Muslim seat. So what we could say from this is basically that this kind of wave actually could be replicated into other state, especially what will happen in Malacca, which will happen, if I'm not mistaken, 3 to 4 months from now. There will be a local election that will be held there again, and for sure, if this formula will, if this formula uh, will be used again in Malacca, it will also bring a big wave, a blue kind of wave into Malacca. And as we all know, Pakatan Harapan doesn't had enough strength in Malacca. The same thing happened in Johor. But Negeri Sembilan is kind of different because Negeri Sembilan is a state that had been held by Pakatan Harapan since 2018. So the past Menteri Besar, which is Amiduddin Harun or Tok Min, actually become Menteri Besar since 2018. So almost, if I'm not mistaken, 8 years of him become Menteri Besar. So Pakatan Harapan have a huge advantage in Negeri Sembilan. Even with that huge advantage, they still lost. So try imagine what will happen in Malacca, where they only part of the coalition, not the government themselves, but only part of the coalition. They will be wiped out, especially in the Malay area seat. So if we broke this kind of idea into the future, let's say 2 to 3 years from now, where not 3 years, I think 2 years from now, where general election will be held nationwide in parliament seat, what will happen to the Pakatan Harapan? For sure, Pakatan Harapan would be wiped out from all of the Malay seat that there had been won back in the GE15. So the seat that had been predominantly Malay that had been won by Pakatan Harapan, the seat like being held by Prime Minister himself, which is um, Parlimen Tambun, Parlimen Ampang, Parlimen Gombak in Selangor. Even if they are situated in Selangor, which is Pakatan Harapan stronghold, it will give them a big problem in the future time. So unless a kind of new strategy had been gathered by them, I will not think that this is will be good for them in the future time if they still follow the same kind of way of managing this kind of thing. So it's highly problematic for Pakatan Harapan if you ask in my own opinion lah. So that's one topic actually regarding interesting that happened in Malaysia 2 to 3 weeks back. So enough in politic. Let us a little bit touch upon the idea of economy itself. So what is the trending right now? As we know, the trending things that happened recently is actually semiconductor. So if many of you guys do not aware what happened 2 to 3 weeks ago, there is this kind of crash happen in South Korea stock market. If you could view it a little bit, it's not a crash actually. It's a kind of correction that happened in the South Korea stock market. As we all know, there are two main semiconductor company in South Korea. One of it is actually Samsung, which is Samsung Electronic, that involved heavily in the semiconductor production, including HBM, and also SK Hynix, which their main operation was basically HBM, high bandwidth memory. So if you do not know what is HBM, HBM is actually a kind of memory chip that will be used inside the semiconductor chip itself for the AI purposes. So that's actually HBM, the simplified version of it. The problem with um, company that involve in this kind of, we could say, scheme is actually that is their main operation line, especially SK Hynix. If we view SK Hynix, actually their really main interest is actually inside the memory service, not in terms of manufacturing of other type of chips like what Samsung Electronic had been used to be back then. So if there is some kind of adjustment in the global consumption of semiconductor itself in the AI industry, for example, the one that will be carried by this wave is actually SK Hynix instead of Samsung, because they still got those kind of other sector in their own disposal, such as smartphone. They still have those kind of manufacturing power in terms of semiconductor. They are direct competitor with the SMC, so they still can be contracted towards other designer AI chip company out there, not SK Hynix. So what happened actually? I think back 1 to 2 years ago, South Korean president, so Lee Jae-myung, basically facing public and political backlash due to the economic turbulence in the stock market itself. So basically, he got this kind of um, publicity back then, and also kind of, we could say, many of his ideas actually kind of popular, but Yeah, he kind of populist figure in South Korea politic. So he kind of aware that AI is booming 1 to 2 years back. So he want to ride those kind of booming into his own popularity. So what he done is actually he introduced a high risk single stock leverage ETF, exchange trade funds, back in May 2025 and also 2026. Basically, it's kind of the idea where, hey, there are AI boom happening in global market right now, and we happens to be part of the supply chain itself through SK Hynix, through Samsung, and also through several other AI company and also technological company in South Korea. So why not I create a kind of ETF for you guys, which is retail investor in Korea, which many of them consist of young people. Why not all of you invest in this ETF so that you could increase your own money through this ETF? So if we kind of borrowing this logic into Malaysian landscape, just imagine PMX or Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim decided one day that, hey, there are AI booming that happen in global market, and we are part of the supply chain. So I made this one ETF which involve many of the AI company, let's say Inari Technology, let's say FPI, whatever kind of AI company or AI related or chip related company, Silterra. I put it into one of the ETF. It will be some kind of government approved investment. So all of you guys need is actually put your money, just give trust to us, and also let your money to be increased over time. The problem with this premise, first and foremost, is actually it's not you the one that control the the price market or the stock market for each of these company inside ETF. The main problem is actually each of these company compete in the global market for some, I would say, niche market share. So it's not the big one. Even though SK Hynix and also Samsung Electronic had been raised into a $1 trillion company recently due to the HBM demand, my main problem is actually it's still rely heavily towards the global AI consumption market. And also many of this global AI consumption market is actually a kind of bubble in itself. So just imagine what happened if a crash happened, if the burst of the bubble happen. What will happen is actually a correction will happen in the stock market, and of the retail investor will suffer the most. The retail investor will suffer the most, not the big company that actually got of dollar in their own disposal, but many of these retail investor, people like me and you, who actually put our own life saving into this kind of ETF and company. So when correction happen inside of this stock market, many of the retail investor, which consists of the young people in Korea, suffer because they lost their money. They lost all of their life saving. They lost what could be potentially their future source of fund, so to speak. So mm, if I can paraphrase what had been said here, President rushes to review policies amid growing backlash from young Koreans. President Lee Jae-myung is pushing to revise policies that are criticized for going against the interests of young Koreans, as his approval rating among this demographic remained the lowest of any age group. The dispute measures span multiple sectors, including a tax overhaul plan concerning individual saving account, which angered people in their 20s and 30s by stripping away existing benefit. The measure also include 22 marriage-related policy, which have been nicknamed OK. So actually, uh, many things that had been put together into this article. I want to focus more towards the stock exchange. I don't want to talk about those marriage proposal. Korea president stock dream bump into leverage ETF backlash. South Korea most closely watched stock market innovation is morphing into a headache. Oh my god. It's a Bloomberg. I don't get, I don't have money, guys, to read to pay for the subscription. Mm. Hmm. South Korea effort to rein in the leverage. My God. Ai. South Korea effort to rein in the leverage product, wreaking havoc in its financial market, may not go far enough to cool skyrocketing volatility. Okay, this is actually just a mumbling from the stock market people. As the hottest threat in the world has hit reverse, the country's stock market down about 40% in months. It is local investor, young people, pensioners, mom and dads who borrowed money and pile in the lead who are hurting most of all. That has turned up the heat on the government that cheered on the on the rising market and has been under pressure as it has fallen, with some investor placing condolence flower outside the country parliament building in protest. Amid diving market on Wednesday, the Bank of Korea governor and heads of financial regulator met in the evening to discuss where to stem the ban. After the meeting, regulators said they would put caps on individual investment into single stock leverage fund. So this is kind of ETF lah that we talked before, and raise the trading cost for those ETFs. So basically, they put the high bar into any retail investor that had put interest into buying this ETF in the future. So instead lower the bar, they higher the bar, which have had an outsized role in rally and the reckoning, turning the market because stock into roller coaster rides. But market participants say the rule do not target the scale of ETF leverage, as regulator in Hong Kong have this month, and it will be tricky to dampen the influence so long as there are buyers who want to get rich quick. That's the problem lah. Many of these youngsters, I will not blame them, but basically many of their mindsets actually how to become rich quickly. So the idea is AI is this kind of lottery that will give them money in the short period of time so that they could be rich. That's it. That's the basic idea in many of these retail investor. I will not blame. Uh, Actually, it's kind of biased for me to give comment for pensioners and also for the people that had already been in their 30s or 40s. So I will comment more towards my generation, basically, which is in their 20s and also maybe early 30s. Many of us has this kind of mindset of how to becoming rich quickly. So if one of the method that could be used is actually buying this kind of AI stock so that we could hope in the future time, which is maybe 2 3 months from now, the price of the stock will be triple so that we could sell it and got 3 times the amount that we had invest before. So that's kind of basic idea that many of these youngsters got in their mind. The measure will help ease volatility in the current stock market, but introducing a liquidity put such as a market stabilization fund would have a greater effect. Okay, another analyst, the head of research at a brokerage in Seoul, speaking anonymously due to the sensitivity of the topic around in South Korea, said the latest regulatory measure were unlikely to work as the cap was hastily announced without putting proper thought into it. The analyst said Hong Kong rules reduce forced selling during market stress, helping to lower volatility. Okay, however, the ETF investment cap in South Korea will not have existing who will not be required to sell holding. The price swings are likely to stay as the Korean rules will not affect similar leverage product. Okay. As market created this week, the sidewalk outside the National Assembly building in Seoul was covered with about 40 red of condolence. Okay, this is kind of dramatic things that Korean like to do. Blah blah blah. Um, the backlash has spread to online community sympathetic to president. Okay, democratic. Suggests on his temporary suspension of the trading, saying extraordinary measure were needed to after sharp. Okay, so basically a kind of drop happened in the stock market, which the target would be these two company, which is SK Hynix and also Samsung Electronic, which happen to be put in the same ETF. Okay, so for me, the main problem here is actually the politic itself. Many of the politicians would ride this popular wave of, okay, this is a way for us to increase our own wealth. So let's build this kind of ETF, put all of the AI company in it, and help for the best, hope for the best. Basically, that's it. It's part of the global consumption market. That's the thing that we need to aware regarding this thing. We cannot expect when we put our money inside a company, then company will flourish just because they're involved in the AI. That's kind of 101 mistake. Mistake 101. The simplest form of mistake that could be formed by anybody, not just retail investor, but the hedge fund or anything. This is kind of thing that you, as a retail investor, should prevent yourself from doing. Even your government against it, even your government basically say, no, you should go. You should just buy this ETF and just hope for the best. No, it rarely happen. Maybe it will do you goods in 2 3 months or maybe 1 2 years, but in terms of longer than that, is actually kind of really suspicious lah to happen. So coming back to the topic of AI itself, why this kind of correction happen inside the market? If I'm not mistaken, actually, China has released their own version of AI again, which is Quen AI, if I'm not mistaken. It just happened weeks ago. Single stock leverage exchange trade fund ETF, saying they had net blah 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 blah. Hmm. Okay. So basically, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually due to the China itself. There is one company that had been released a new AI, which is Quen AI, if I'm not mistaken. So Quen AI is a kind of same AI as ChatGPT, but I think the structure of it is kind of unique compared to ChatGPT, where it use less, I think, token to generate information that is needed. So basically, it's kind of optimized version of ChatGPT. So when it released, which is a week ago, it caused kind of havoc in the market. the many of the AI related industry actually face this kind of problem. So it's not just South Korea, but South Korea affect the most mainly because of the involvement of the ETF itself. So yeah. So the lesson that you guys, if any of you guys watching right now, if you guys really wanted to put your money inside stock market, basically the first thing that you guys need to do is actually study in the stock market. Don't just simply put your money and just follow your guts where it tells you. That is a mistake. The same thing that happened with the South Korean market. Basically, you need to know what kind of industry that you put your money in. If I'm not mistaken, what is his name? Warren Buffett. If I'm not mistaken, Warren Buffett used to say, I will not put my money inside a company or industry that I do not know how it operates. So basically, Warren Buffett is kind of, we could say, a conservative figure in terms of investing lesson. But he kind of speaking truth there. Basically, if you do not know something, don't ever follow the wave. That's the 101 mistake that many of you youngsters should put in mind. First, you must study the industry itself. So if you kind of having this kind of confidence towards AI, at least study it first. Study all of the different sectors in AI, different kind of layer in AI, different kind of chip manufacturing in AI, who are the part of the supplying chain. For example, in terms of Malaysia, what kind of, we could say, layer of semiconductor manufacturing chips that we are involved in. Because Malaysia, we involve only in two things, which is testing and packaging. In terms of manufacturing, it's mostly sided in East Asian country like Taiwan, TSMC, and also South Korea, and also some part of it in United States, which is Intel, mm, Global Foundry, Micron. While in Malaysia, actually our own expertise mainly focus in testing and packaging, which many of it situated in Penang and also some of it in Kedah, which is in Kulim High Tech. So we must know what kind of thing that we put our money in. That's just do that. Just read, keep read anything that you can find on internet, a book that you can search either online or on physical store. Just buy it and read it. That is the simplest thing that you guys can do. Only that. So is that's the first lah. Second thing, study the supply chain. If I could say that. For example, if you view something like Intel, you must understand who supply them all of the raw material, who supply them all of the machinery, who supply them all of the technical know-how. Because as we all know, Intel is not those kind of big company that it used to be 2 or 3 decades ago. Because right now the superstar in terms of manufacturing AI chip is actually TSMC and also Samsung, but mainly TSMC. So all of these things should be taken into consideration, including the politic in itself. So when Trump, for example, won the election, back in 2024, we must view it through those kind of administration in US through those lens. So when you see that if Trump wins, what will happen in his presidential term? Is he a kind of pro-American businesses, or is he kind of globalism, pro-globalism? As we see in his campaign, in his many of his speech, he focused more towards the pro-US approach in all of his business way of handling things. So you cannot just dismiss all of this as kind of, or maybe this is kind of temporary thing that he like to talk on the stage, basically to influence the voters to vote for him. No, you must view it as a kind of real in itself. So that's it. I think that's the topic that really interests me lah. You should view all of the we could say connection between all of those things.